carnal, dice mi gente, la raza está abajo y tú estás indiferente. Prefieres cerrar los ojos, no vi nada. Estabas ocupado por andar en la tomada. Te gusta tirar el cruising todo el día, buscando a las mujeres como si el mundo acabaría. Pero no sabías que tú podías continuar tu educación para superarte en la vida. Hermano joven, levanta tu frente y siente el orgullo de ser un descendiente de los aztecas, los incas y los mayas. Ayúdame a pelear y vencer.
So the Metropolitan Detention Center, even though it is relatively new, is a horrible, decrepit, and dangerous facility. It's frequently without heat. It is frequently having leaking plumbing, vermin, bugs, and rats. It is just physically incredibly poor shape for a new building. It is also a very dangerous place. And the danger comes from the fact that basically every federal defendant who is awaiting trial in New York is housed there. So unlike people post-sentencing where they get divided into maximum, medium, and low security, you basically have everybody mixed together. Any high-profile defendant is going to be at risk because prisoners often want to build a reputation by going after somebody. A high-profile defendant who is believed to have access to a lot of money will be at risk because they will be potentially the victims of somebody trying to extort them for money. It also is likely true that given the fact that President Trump has said that Maduro is effectively the leader of TDA, Tren de Aragua, that any gang member who's in there whose gang has a beef with TDA will look to potentially take it out against Maduro or his wife. So all of these things make it a very dangerous situation for Maduro in particular.
Antonio Díaz con su programa de Mestizo Experience. Estamos en el mes de enero, ya estamos en el año de 2026. Ahí vamos, ya se empezó el año. As those of you that watch my program of Mestizo Experience know, this is a bilingual program. So I'll be switching back and forth. And to start off, even though I was going to save this for the end, I want to start off with what is going on, because it's worldwide. It's going to impact nations across the world, I think. I mean, at least in my thinking, but I don't know. Since, again, we have what is it? The 1% controls the world's economy, so it might not, since the rest of us are just, underlings and workers and surviving in whatever system we live in. But Trump, again, had been bombing those fishermen off Venezuela, their boats, killed up to 20 people, I believe, or so. Even strafing survivors till there was no survivors, claiming they were bringing drugs, even though there was no proof. And that didn't try to capture any or board or seize any evidence. None of that. Just bomb them and kill them. Well, he used the same excuse that Nicolas Maduro, the president of Venezuela, is a drug dealer. And since, again, Trump, using the U.S. way of thinking of manifest destiny, that it all belongs to the United States, right? It's a God-given right. Said that fentanyl is killing so many people, and so he used that as an excuse that it's a weapon of mass destruction. Even though most educated people will tell you that Venezuela does not make fentanyl, does not export fentanyl, but that is Trump's excuse to make war on Venezuela because they want the oil and other minerals for not making today's modern batteries and equipping our electronic systems to make them smaller and not not using so much heat, right? These different minerals work that way, but mainly the oil. I'm pretty sure he's already got Exxon or Mobil or one of the big shit that are go in there and just take the oil away from Venezuela. As he says, they're going to be running it, even though they have already their interim president, the VP, Miss Delcy, that is denouncing the United States for what their wartime act, their war. It's a war action of going in there and using helicopters to strafe, drones to bomb 2 or 3 different cities, attacking civilians and military, and using special ops to capture Nicolas Maduro. Today's military is equipped with all sorts of things, because we know that Ukraine was using all sorts of satellite and blocking and doing to be able to get their drones into Russia and doing a lot of damage until Trump became president and stopped giving that support or assistance to Ukraine. And so then Russia was able to start bombing the Ukrainians again and stopping that blocking or of electronic signals that the Ukrainians were using. Because everybody's saying, well, why didn't they blow those helicopters out of the sky? Well, they didn't know to begin with. If the United States is using those satellites to block their entry in there so that they can't see them, be able to pick them up on their radar, and they're able to get in there and do this, and which our military is being used for subversive reasons for Trump's and his billionaire corporate friends from the oil industry and whatever to do this, because it's illegal. I mean, it's against international law to go in there and kidnap a president. Otherwise, what kind of a world would you have if everybody could do that? If someone, say Canada, could send someone into the United States and kidnap Trump, which, if only. These are the sorts of things that you destabilize countries and regions and area, but the United States is famous for it. It did it with under Bush, Junior there, when he went into Iraq claiming that they were responsible for 9/11, even though it was the Saudis, right? So these sorts of things, and it was the oil, because Iraq was in there trying to get oil, and so they stopped them and put them in place. They destabilized the whole area, and so these issues are international, or of international interest. Le estoy hablando del secuestro del presidente Nicolás Maduro por los Estados Unidos, por más o menos el del Donald Trump y los que le pagan a él, ¿no? Los billonarios del petróleo, los corporativos, porque es lo que es. Él mismo lo está diciendo, que van a correr el gobierno de Venezuela hasta que él elija a alguien que quiere poner ahí. Eso es en contra de las leyes internacionales, porque no puede un presidente ser secuestrado en esta manera. Son actos de guerra, ¿no?, que hizo Trump en contra de Venezuela, en contra del gobierno de Nicolás Maduro. Aunque Nicolás Maduro no es una persona dulce, ¿no?, y la gente está en contra. Pero es que los Estados Unidos, desde Hugo Chávez, le ha puesto embargos en contra de Venezuela, aunque están bien ricos, tienen petróleo, tienen todos tipos de minerales, que debe de ser un país muy rico y la gente debe estar muy feliz. Pero con los Estados Unidos imponiéndole estos embargos, que no pueden entrar o salir, no pueden importar o exportar, y los están parando, pues no pueden ni entrar ni cómo hacer comida ahí, ¿no? Todo cuesta mucho y la gente pues está sufriendo, pero no es culpa de cualquier presidente que ellos tengan, es culpa de los Estados Unidos, porque han seguido esta política de que no, si no ellos no tienen el petróleo de Venezuela, van a estar a ellos oponiéndose que se enriquece Venezuela en negocios sobre el petróleo que son dueños ellos y les pertenece, porque fuera en contra de la ley que otro gobierno entrara en los Estados Unidos y dijera, oye, ustedes no le pueden vender petróleo a tal o a tal, nomás pueden vendérselos a nosotros. Eso es en contra de leyes internacionales, pero es lo que hace Trump, es lo que hace todavía los Estados Unidos, lo que ha hecho siempre, se lo digo, porque lo hizo Bush en contra de Irak, lo han hecho lo hizo Obama en contra de Libia, lo han hecho siempre, lo hizo Reagan, lo hizo el otro Bush, Herbert Bush también lo hizo en contra de Panamá. Esto no es nada nuevo, ¿no? Si hay algo que ellos quieren, dinero, petróleo, drogas, porque la cocaína, ese negocio lo estaba haciendo Reagan con ahí que era en Nicaragua, cuando andaban vendiendo rifles y dándole rifles a los de Centroamérica y vendiendo las drogas para mandarle dinero a Irán. Todo esto, Irán contra, que andaban ahí. Y no era a nadie culpable de todo eso. Pero esto no es nada nuevo, es lo que le estoy diciendo. Y pero lo que están haciendo es violando leyes internacionales. Porque estos gobiernos son soberanos. Cada nación tiene su propio derecho de mantener su gobierno y tener manera de pues gobernar, ¿no? Y darle a la gente lo que necesita, si techo, comida y vivienda, trabajo. Si los Estados Unidos impone leyes que prohíbe esto en contra de los países aquí en Centroamérica por el Monroe Doctrine, la doctrina del presidente Monroe, que fue que en 1800, quién sabe qué, que dicen ellos que le pertenece todo eso a los Estados Unidos. Por eso el menso de Trump ahí renombró el Golfo de México al Golfo de América, que el menso no sabe que América es todo el continente, no nomás los Estados Unidos del norte, porque a los Estados Unidos de México también son de Norteamérica, ¿no? Pero están bien mensos. What I've been talking about is, again, this move against Venezuela is nothing new. The United States has done this throughout. I mean, you have Bush Jr. doing it in Iraq, claiming that they're the ones that did 9/11 when it's not true, and it was over oil. You had Bush Sr., Herbert Bush, and Iran-Contra, where they were selling weapons to one and selling drugs in the United States to have money to give to the Iranians, and it was a mess. But not even Oliver North was found guilty. Now he's some kind of hero or talk show host, or it's insane. But they've been doing this throughout. They've done it time and time again. Is the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo is coming up in February, the anniversary of the Guadalupe. The Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo comes up February 2nd. It was signed 1848. It was signed in Mexico in that town of Guadalupe Hidalgo by Trist, who was the diplomat sent by Polk, President Polk over there. And in that one, they had Article 10 that was supposed to protect the rights of Mexican citizens and their land, which was then, because this was ratified then, the United States did all kind of fighting over it. The Congress ratified it in 1850 on July 4th, of course, July 4th. 1850, they ratified the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo, and they excluded Article 10, protecting the land rights of Mexicans living now what became the United States, right, which used to be Mexico. Because in that invasion, again, in that invasion that the United States did of Mexico, not only did they take what the Anglos that were supposed to be Mexican citizens that did a rebellion against Mexico in Texas, but the United States took 55% of what was Mexico then. Texas, California, Utah, Colorado, Nevada, New Mexico, all this, right, that they took, and of course started the gold rush in California, but were able to keep up with slavery, especially here in Texas, because of the cotton industry and tobacco and all that they wanted to keep going. And that was the main issue that led to Texas becoming a republic, was that they wanted to maintain slavery. It is within their constitution, and you can read it, still there. You want to read the Republic of Texas Constitution, you'll see it is to maintain slavery, and is very specific in this language. Mexico had abolished slavery in 1829. Mexico had undergone a revolution against Spain from 1810 to 1821. So it was in a very weak military state when the Anglos took over what was Texas, and then when Polk decided to also want to buy California, and being refused, he invaded Mexico. Still in a very weak state from having defeated Spain, still fighting with England. England was coming in through the Oregon territories, which they're not theirs. It belonged to native people, all of it. And they were fighting with the Russians and England, and Spain is fighting over there with them. And then Mexico took over that fight, and then with Polk, with his Manifest Destiny, which is still what is being used today. You can hear it. You can hear Trump say it. That it's a part of the U.S. Manifest Destiny, and he doesn't even want to call it the Monroe Doctrine anymore. He wants to call it the what is it? The Don Doctrine.
I am Yaqui. My nation did not begin in Mexico or the United States. My people live on both sides of what is now called the U.S.-Mexico border. One side calls me American, the other calls me Mexican. But neither name tells my real story. Before those countries existed, this was indigenous land. Our trails, villages, rivers, ceremonies, and burial grounds were already here. The border came later, and it split families, clans, and nations in half. When people say, "You look Mexican," I answer plainly. Mexicans are indigenous too. I am them and they are me. The border didn't change our blood, it only changed the name written on documents. I am not crossing borders. I am standing on my homeland.
The Kickapoo Nation lives on both sides of the U.S.-Mexican border. We were Plains tribes that ended up in northern Mexico.
They say we did not cross borders, we survived them. Forced removals, wars, broken treaties pushed us south, then north again.
They say now they call us binational, like it was our choice. But displacement is not migration. We are Kickapoo everywhere we stand.
I am Apache. My people moved across mountains and deserts long before maps were drawn.
The border turned our seasonal movements into crimes. It turned warriors into fugitives, families into refugees on their own land.
They say you look Mexican, but what they mean is indigenous, and they don't understand that Mexico itself is indigenous land.
I am Kumeyaay. My territory runs from California into Baja California. The border sliced through our communities like it meant something eternal. But it is younger than our songs, younger than our language, younger than our memory. When people stop me and ask what I am, I say, I am from here, from before your nations existed.
There are many more indigenous nations cut in half by the colonial border. The Mayo, the Cocopa, Pima, and many more.
Borders don't define indigenous people. Borders separate indigenous people.
When you say we look Mexican, remember this truth. Mexico is built on indigenous nations, and most Mexicans are indigenous.
We are not divided by culture. We are divided by colonial law. We are transnational because colonization is artificial.
Our roots are deeper than any border wall. We were never illegal.
Not Monroe, is the Donroe Doctrine, which is such an idiot. But he wants to put his name over everything, destroying the White House and doing all kind of idiocies. The Kennedy Center has to have his name. And anywhere he can put a plaque, he'll put it. gold toilets in the new ballroom in his building in the White House that he tore down for himself. And that's the times that we're living in, okay? I mean, but it's not going to impact just us. You have all these other nations that are, if China decides to also take Taiwan now, what would stop them? The United States used to be sort of the monitor or the guardian or police of such things, but when you have a president like Trump in there that's doing these things, they can just point, you just did that. What's to stop Russia, again, from continuing, not just with Ukraine, but moving inward more? Other states that used to be part of Soviet Union. See, and Venezuela was never part of the United States. Neither was Mexico. It's the other way around. Texas, California, Utah, Colorado were part of Mexico, and the United States took them away from them. And they want to continue moving with this manifest destiny idiocy. They want to call it ideology. I call it an idiocy. There's, again, and you see what's going on in Palestine with Netanyahu over there. That's genocide. He's a war criminal. But instead, Trump wants to give him a plaque or some kind of an award. They're killing all the Palestinians to take all the land, and they once suffered through this during World War II, which the United States finally got involved in that, to kick Hitler out and stop all what he was doing, which I think Trump is pretty much doing the same thing here because of all the inhumanities against brown people, because we still look like our native ancestors. We don't look like Spaniards. Spaniards or Castilians were Anglo-looking with blue eyes, white skin. So they keep calling us Hispanics. I don't know why. Hablamos español, but we're not Hispanic. I go from both. I've been colonized by both countries. And I also can speak still some Nahuatl, which was my grandmother's language, a little bit of Coahuiltecan from my other side, and still some more that I've learned from other elders, some Lakotas and Inde, and so Dene, all this. But this is native land. And how can anyone be illegal on stolen land? Which is what Trump is pursuing right now, which was the United States has pursued since 1850. Actually, once they ratified the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo, and then more into the 1870s and 1890s, creating more and more anti-immigration legislation and deporting and removing mainly Mexicans and Chinese, anyone that was not white. But if you were white, came from Russia, Poland, Germany, whatever, Ireland, you were still treated not as good, but until you were integrated into the system of being white, then you were all right. But for us, you're brown or black or yellow, if you want to say it, Chinese or Oriental. No, it finds a reason to deport or remove. Y si eras indígena, indio, que dicen indio, no, aquí no es India, pero Cristo Colón lo nombró India, y no es India. Aquí es Semanahuac. Es la tierra de nuestra gente indígena. Si eres indígena, te ven y dicen que eres extranjero, fuereño, alien, que no eres de esta tierra, cuando aquí hemos estado por miles y miles de años. This is our land. They're taking it away with their idea that they're the chosen people, just like Israel's doing to the Palestinians, that they're the chosen people. God doesn't choose one human over another human. If there is a God, and we believe that there are because we're spiritual, no one is better than anyone else. We're all the same. We all have the same rights to pursue our happiness and keep our family together, not to be suffering the way that Trump wants to do right now, the way the United States has done for almost 3 centuries now here in the Southwest, 2.5 centuries, and the way they've been doing it for the last 400 years here. Hasta luego, su programa de Mestizo Experience, Tlazo Camati, Testocate y Antonio Díaz.
In This Week in Military History, we take a look back at the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo, which was signed on February 2nd, 1848, ultimately ending the Mexican-American War. Following the failure of diplomacy with Mexico to enlarge the U.S. map across the continent, in March 1846, President James Polk adopted a military recourse by ordering 2 brigades under Brigadier General Zachary Taylor to fortify disputed land along the northern bank of the Rio Grande, near present-day Brownsville, Texas. In late April, the Mexican army prepared to mount an offensive to displace Taylor's Army of Occupation. Upon learning of a Mexican attack upon a scouting party dispatched by General Taylor, on May 11, 1846, President Polk successfully lobbied Congress for a declaration of war. A few days prior, the outnumbered Taylor routed his adversaries at the battles of Palo Alto and Resaca de Palma, thereafter instigating a protracted invasion by land and sea into Mexico's northern and heartland regions. Nevertheless, support for the conflict ran high among the American public. Despite the continual victories of U.S. offenses, upheaval, patriotism, and ambivalence among federal officials in Mexico City froze peace negotiations. This impasse obliged Lieutenant General Winfield Scott to seize and occupy the Mexican capital in September 1847 to compel Mexican authorities to settle for Polk's terms. 2 months later, in November 1847, the U.S. presidential envoy, Nicholas Trist, entered a formal peace dialogue with a 3-member Mexican commission. He convinced them to concede the coveted northern Mexican states for the sum of $15 million. They also established the future rights and status of Mexican citizens inhabiting the ceded lands and geographic boundaries between their countries, codifying these accords in the Treaty of Peace, Friendship, Limits, and Settlement, signed in the village of Guadalupe Hidalgo outside Mexico City. The accord endowed the United States 55% of Mexico's total land area. It also decisively affirmed the Rio Grande as the western and southern boundary of the state of Texas. Join us next time for another segment of This Week in Military History with the Pritzker Military Museum and Library.
Como Tupac Katari, regresaré y seré millones, loco. Ya somos millones, derrumbando al imperio a diario, lírica anticolonial, mente indígena en escenario, rompiendo las catedrales que llamaron coloniales, memoria en movimiento, pueblos vivos imparables. Juego ajedrez con la migra, jaque mate al discurso. Me quisieron invisible, me volví pulso y recurso. Dice el mano de obra, yo digo columna vertebral. Si nosotros su imperio no desayuna ni puede funcionar. FM de odio repite su programación. Yo transmito interferencia ancestral, descolonización. Cirujano con sílabas, corto el mito con precisión. Mapas hechos por imperios no reemplazan tradición. No crucé por ambición ni por sueño prefabricado. Crucé por guerras económicas que ellos mismos han sembrado. Si el sur sangra pa' que el norte pueda acumular, el sur regresa caminando, no lo puedes deportar. Katari no habló de países, habló de procesos, de pueblos fragmentados que regresan convertidos en multitud. Katari malo, Tupac Katari.
¿Qué onda, carnal? Dice mi gente, la raza está abajo y tú estás indiferente. Prefieres cerrar los ojos, no vi nada. Estabas ocupado por andar en la tomada. Te gusta tirar el cruising todo el día, buscando a las mujeres como si el mundo acabaría. Pero no sabías que tú podías continuar tu educación para superarte en la vida. Hermano joven, levanta tu frente y siente el orgullo de ser un descendiente de los aztecas, los incas y los mayas. Ayúdame a pelear y vencer esta...